It's like there's nowhere you can't pin that to anything that that is matter. You can't say that subjective experience comes from this. And that's the big
Right.
problem that still hasn't been solved. And to me, there's so much, look, I mean, that's where a lot of, again, religious and philosophical traditions try to
Mhm.
come in and fill the gap. A lot of spiritual traditions, not just religious. And yeah, it's an area that hasn't been answered by science. Or at least to then say, you know what, we have to give up to the mystery. And maybe this is an area that cannot be answered, at least by science in the way that we practice it, you know,
Right.
contemporaneously. And I think actually what science means, maybe it can't be mattered, but like answered by material instruments and getting better microscopes or better MRI. Maybe this is, an area where we as humans need to come in contact with the mystery.
This is Story to Count with Jen Jumba. In conversations with writers, something magical happens. And as readers, we begin to see them as human beings and not just the name on the spine of a book. My hope is through these conversations, you learn about their craft and them as a person, and you'll become like me, fiercely loyal and want to read their current book, entire backlist, any future book, or any book they blurb. And when you see their name, you'll want to support them, not only as incredible storytellers, but also the thoughtful individuals you have come to know. And I am super excited because my guest today is Lauren Oliver. She is an author, screenwriter, and media entrepreneur. She's the author of the upcoming novel, The Girl in the Lake, which just published this week, which is also her adult debut. Her previous works include multiple New York Times best-selling novels for teens, including Before I Fall, which just so happened to spend 17 weeks on the list and was adapted into a feature film released by Open Road. She's written the Delirium trilogy, a 2 million copy selling dystopian series translated into 35 languages. Panic, which she later adapted into the streaming TV show on Amazon Prime of the same name, for which she wrote every episode and served as executive producer. Along the way, Lauren founded the IP company Story Giants and helped to package and edit nearly 100 other novels. She's the co-founder of Encantor AI, a self-scaling digital media engine built on a new and proprietary foundational model of artificial intelligence. This makes me so happy, that respects copyright by providing both IP attribution and royalty shares to contributing sources. As a librarian, I just did a webinar on AI today, and this makes me so happy that you're on the forefront of this. Lauren was raised in Westchester, New York. She attended the University of Chicago and got her MFA from NYU. She divides her time between Maryland and LA, and you can follow her on Goodreads, Amazon, or Instagram at Lauren_Oliver_books to learn more. Now, I remember reading Before I Fall when I was in grad school and taking a young adult class, and this book became a benchmark for the other titles we read during the semester. Essentially, I would describe Lauren Oliver as a rock star, a true champion of storytelling, and her latest book, The Girl in the Lake, kept me up late reading it to the night because I wasn't able to put it down, and I'm sure you won't either. And it's not just me. US Weekly Magazine says this book is one of the most anticipated books this spring, and People Magazine has also highlighted this book as a must-read as well. So I'm so glad you're joining me here to talk about this
Thank
amazing
you.
book, The Girl in the Lake.
Thank you. It's always a little bit, it's like embarrassing to hear somebody read your bio, but the first introduction, your introduction to this podcast, your reasons for doing this, I honestly started to tear up when I was listening to it. I don't know if you could tell since we're on camera together, but yeah, I really did. Thank you.
Well, what you all do is so special, and the gift of storytelling for readers. I think Hank Felipe Ryan says it's always safe inside of a book.
Yeah.
And I agree.
Yeah.
People need books more than ever and need stories more than ever. And you have done stories in such an epic way, not only for young adults, but then adapted a screenplay
Yeah.
and wrote every episode and
Yeah.
had ownership over it. And then the fact that I want to be part of your, AI army to make sure that you all and your creativity shines and is not overtaken by the bots that somehow think they can write
Yeah.
things that you as a human being can do because you're able to get in touch with the complexities of being a human and capture emotions that AI simply
Absolutely.
cannot.
Well, and also the particularities of individual experience, right? The AI algorithms, the foundational models that exist today, they're giant averaging machines. So
Mhm.
by nature, that's one of the most special things about any kind of art, whether it's commercial or less commercial, more experimental, is that it's somehow born out of like the very unique Umwelt, which is a word that refers to the private universe inside of each person, right?
That is such a
So
beautiful word.
I love that word. And yeah, I mean, it's been a long journey with Encanter, but that was actually the real motivation was both to not allow, to just sit back and not have any control, but to actually partner with people who could help re-engineer a future where creativity doesn't just get averaged out and also stolen. That's very important too.
Without a doubt. I mean, there was just an article in the New York Times about somebody who's publishing 200
Yeah,
books, and dare we say the word
I know.
published because it was done with AI. And gosh, I mean, being a librarian and knowing how information is sacred and you are to cite your source and give the appropriate credit
Yeah,
to that
yeah,
source,
yeah.
I'm just mind boggled that you would even want to admit that you had done that. But that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, the most distasteful thing for me is, I mean, there's an argument to be made that generally, for parents who are helping make custom stories for their kids and stuff like that, who otherwise maybe there's a place for it. But I think some of the gleeful tenor of people just decrying regular authors who write every word and sentence as people who are just getting left behind, right? They're just going to be they're just going to be basically left behind by a technological innovation. It misunderstands the point of creativity,
Hmm.
right? Like and the point of all creation, which is kind of in the act itself. I mean, that's why, I tell people and we encourage people to keep writing even when they're not getting published yet, even when they're, you know, haven't broken through, even when they're in 7th grade, because it's the act of creation itself that carries its own kind of special magic, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So well said. So speaking of this magic, the girl in the lake, I won't tell you that I live in Cleveland on Lake Erie. It's like a half mile from my house. So I was just making sure I didn't end up here. it it is a terrific story. Do you want to talk a little bit about the story
Yeah.
and kind of the,
Yeah.
I'd say,
Like
elevator
preview?
pitch?
Yeah, totally. I really love this book, which is funny. I mean, look, I love all my books, but I recognize when some of them are just more flawed than others. This one a very unmixed feelings about. I love this book very much. So, The Girl on the Lake was inspired by a real life place at the University of Virginia called the Division of Perceptual Studies. The Division of Perceptual Studies is an academic institution that really studies things that mainstream or the institutional kind of psychology and materialist science ignores. Things like near death experiences, which are now called recalled experiences of death and past life. So, in The Girl on the Lake, a very skeptical psychologist who occasionally consults for them goes to evaluate a 6-year-old child who claims to be having memories of a past life. And that brings her back to an area with which she is familiar from her childhood. And very quickly, not a spoiler, by the end of Act One, despite her doubts, it appears that the 6-year-old child has memories of a cold case, 24-year-old cold case. In fact, memories of our protagonist's best friend, Becca, who disappeared the summer they were 14.
Yeah, it is, I think, an experience that several of us can relate to. I mean, several of us have gone to camp as kids, right? And the people that you spend all summer with and
Yes.
you live in the same cabin with, and then you have the fact that they're teens and they're girls. So, of course, there's always a bit of drama.
Yes.
And there's drama for every teen. It's trying to figure out who you are, trying to figure out like who you have a crush on. Everything is every sense seems to be heightened because there's this like longing to like fit in or to belong. So trying to figure out where you are and how you kind of maintain harmony. But you're correct. Kate Willis is the psychologist that is consulted. She was friends with Becca. There were two other friends of theirs, Lenny and Mari, that spent a couple summers together and were great friends until, as you said in Act One, Becca goes missing.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so your story is structured with a then time period and a current time period.
Yes, yes. And I think in general, which I loved because, it again, I mean, it was really relate to for all her flaws, I could really relate to Kate as an adult period. Of course, you know me, I've always loved writing teens, particularly um the dynamics that can be so layered and sometimes even twisted between, this passionate kind of friendship that is both need and worship and envy and all of these things that really happen when you're 14 and 15 years old, right?
Right.
So that's always been something I've been interested in exploring. And this gave me a way of doing both. And I think in general, I mean, the book then it allows it to become kind of also treatise on memory, right? And the loss of self and a lot of other deeper themes that are perennially also interesting to me, especially as I, get into my 40s.
Yeah, I think it's interesting talking about memories and introducing the division of perceptual.
Yeah, DOPS. Yeah.
Yeah, DOPS. It's so much easier to say DOPS. That rolls off the tongue a whole lot easier, right? And I think that that's fascinating because from the very beginning, when I started to read this book, there's the opening scene with them at camp and best of friends. And you feel that we've all had best of friends, at that age. And then it goes to the current time period where Kate is heading back, and there's a 6-year-old named Henley who is having these past memories, and they're uncannily specific. It's not the typical horoscope type stuff where it's like, oh, you will get in a car today. Oh my God, you're kidding. You know me so well, right? So it's fascinating. And part of, your explanation is they want to have a specific framework to make sure that the cases are valid. And that makes sense. I mean, because sometimes there are things we can't explain, but having a framework to kind of define it, I think helps. And you mentioned that they use whether things are consistent, persistent, whether they can be verified independently, and whether or not like how common or how possible it is to be acquired
Could
by
they
some other means.
Right. Yeah, and those are all taken from I mean, again, DOPS is a real life place. They've studied thousands of cases from all over the world of children reporting past life memories, and, those were all taken from their frameworks. I mean, there are some I did a lot of reading, obviously, about the real life cases and how these would be handled. It's pretty fascinating. It's spooky stuff at minimum, right? I tend to be very of the belief that we know so little, like we like to think at every point in history that science is so far advanced that we've basically, keyed into all the secrets of the universe. And then 100 years later, we look back at science of that age and say they didn't know anything. So the chances are that the same thing is happening now, right? So I tend to be very open minded, but at minimum, I think nobody could read any of these real life cases without at least feeling that it was very, very creepy. Um,
Creepy and somewhat like comforting kind of at the same time if you've lost somebody who's really
yeah,
important to you
yeah,
and that person's communicating with you in things that only like you and that other person who you lost.
yes.
But I can tell you from once it shifts into present time, for the rest of the story felt completely off kilter as a reader.
Good,
Completely like
in a good way, I hope? Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I mean in a good way. Like I'm not quite sure how to believe, how if there's
yeah,
evidence. All of this is
that's great, actually. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, that I'm hoping that that was your intention because you did it really well.
yeah,
You
yeah,
also did a really great job, and I think it comes from writing YA of capturing teens in their authentic, angst-ridden, mean-spirited, then turn around and best of buddies.
yes.
which complicates things, right? So
Absolutely.
several themes in the story came up, and it just to me was amazing. Even like Henley, this 6-year-old who apparently has this past life, it's not two people together, but
Mhm.
she was one person and now she's another. And you taking the time to make that distinction, I was like, wow, it's
Yes.
not multiple personalities. So being granular enough with the
Yes.
psychology and that liminal space that you refer to studying was really helpful.
Thank you. Thank you. I find that stuff fascinating. And my sister actually, I mean, it goes, I mean, it's psychology, but it also even goes to what's called the philosophy of cognitive science, which, I tried not to geek out because I want, you want to keep the story moving. But at the same time, there was a part of me that hopes to, in this series, do more than I definitely want to have great mysteries because this is the start of a series, great mysteries,
Thank
but
goodness.
also because because they're, but I also wanted to be able to highlight or bring to readers' attentions, things that do point to at least like greater mysteries, right? Greater mysteries that we are not answering, greater mysteries that are not simply who killed so and so and what happened, which again, by the way, I love that. I love reading that, but are also literally the capital M mysteries of being alive and conscious. My sister actually is a professor of the philosophy of cognitive science. And what that means is that she looks at brain studies and then uses that to answer questions about the fundamental nature of consciousness. So a lot of this was actually inspired by, work I've heard her talking about over the years, as well as research she could point to.
I can only imagine the conversations you and your sister must have. Hey, how's it going? What's new? Oh my gosh, the human brain to me is fascinating how it works, and it's like the only organ that we can't really study as
Yeah.
well when we're alive. Like a lot of all the other organs that we have, once somebody passes away, you can autopsy and study and check and see, but you can't really do that with the brain.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
to me, it
Totally.
is this fascinating what we do know and what we still don't know yet.
Absolutely. I mean, and what we don't know yet is much heavier than what we do know. Like, I was just talking to somebody about this. There's this famous thing. I mean, it is the most problematic, interesting question that still exists in many ways in science, which is called the mind body problem or the mind matter problem, I think. But basically, the idea is okay, look, we know that thoughts are correlated to all these chemical, and electrical signals going. But if you really think about that, and you really think about how the movement of chemicals and electricity between synapses, how does that give you the internal experience of, for example, hearing a song lyric? Like, it's baffling. Like, there's no, you have, again, chemicals moving, electrical
Yeah.
signals moving, and inside of you, you're suddenly hearing a song from 1992. Like, it makes no sense. And it's a
No,
massive.
it is, and it's why is it I can always remember the lyrics from some horrible, like, one-hit wonder, but I can't tell you if I ate breakfast or what are the capitals of all 50 states. It
Yeah,
just
exactly.
how things are stored in our brain, Broca's area of the brain is designed
How we
for. Yeah,
experience them as internal, as again, this Umwelt, where all of us are walking around having this subjective experience of being alive, alive, alive. It's like there's nowhere you can't pin that to anything that is matter. You can't say that subjective experience comes from this. And that's the big problem that still hasn't been solved. And to me, there's so much. Look, I mean, that's where a lot of, again, religious and philosophical traditions try to come in and fill the gap. A lot of spiritual traditions, not just religious. And yeah, it's an area that hasn't been answered by science.
and I just wonder, will it be, or how soon will it be? I hope people are still curious, long
Yeah.
after I'm gone
Yeah.
to want to know.
Yeah. Or at least to then say, you know what, we have to give up to the mystery. And maybe this is an area that cannot be answered, at least by science in the way that we practice it, you know,
Right.
contemporaneously. And I think actually what science means maybe it can't be mattered, but like answered by material instruments and getting better microscopes or better
Right.
MRIs. Maybe this is, an area where we as humans need to come in contact with the mystery.
Right. And I think there is that part that until that happens, can we just accept that some things defy
Yeah.
explanation at the moment?
Right.
There's
Right.
a point, and I'm looking for it, that in the book where you talk about, like, how human beings will find any kind of
Yes.
reason for something happening other than it being merely a coincidence. Part of how we're wired, other than to connect with other people, is we need to, like, this understanding why. I mean, we think it happens when kids are 2 and never stop asking that question, but as we get older, I mean, we have to find meaning in order to whether accept it or process it or whatever the right word is.
It's so funny you say that because I was going to bed the other night and I was thinking, I don't know why, but I just had this image of, like, again, if the universe was a giant neural net, much like one of these LLMs, humans being these little, like, basically bots where our sole function would be to make meaning out of a lot of noise and chaos, right? Like, we get things happen to us and they get put in and we make stories and meaning out of them. Everybody does this, not just storytellers. Everybody does this. Like, we are the biggest meaning seeking animals. I mean, possibly the only meaning seeking animals. And that can be, I mean, it can be dangerous in a way, too. I mean, there can be extreme over attempts to see meaning everywhere. And some of that, you can see it in certain kind of psychological disorders, right? But it's also just so fundamental to the experience of being human. And I think also that's one of the reasons that stories and books are so important because they kind of help refract back, the noise of a messy individual life into all these different forms that help you understand what life can possibly mean, what all different kinds of lives can possibly mean, what all different kinds of journeys can possibly mean.
I think that's so well said, and I also think to your point with telling stories and reading stories is it helps us find words for things that we can't
Yeah.
always articulate. You
Yeah.
have this feeling, but you can't quite put it into words, and then you're reading in a book and you're like, "Oh, okay, that's it. I get it."
Yeah.
And you kind of feel like, "Okay, I'm seen." I mean, yes, it's a character in a book, but it's an incredible comfort to a lot of people who read to not feel
Yeah.
alone,
Yeah.
versus reading to be entertained or to learn. And I
Yeah.
have to say how excited I am that this is a series.
Thank
Like
you.
I'm hooked from book 1 and cannot wait. Um,
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. So it also strikes me as some of the beautiful language in the books, and I'm just going to read a line. It talking about Kate. It was like this when she first encountered people. Like they were made of long threads, a ravel of fears and tragedies and secrets that needed to be teased and pulled apart, sorted and categorized.
Thank you. Yeah. Sorry. You know what's funny that's happening in my head right now?
Hmm.
Hopefully, this will be
Well, I
amusing.
want to hear what your little neural networks and electrical pulses.
All I can think of is this 3-star review, or maybe it was even less, being like, this writing is terrible. Now, the reviews for this book have been amazing, so I'm super pleased. So the fact that I'm still zeroing in on this one person who said my writing was terrible, I mean, first of all, that's so common to
That's
the
an
experience of
AI
being a
bot that
author.
did that. Just
You know what?
saying.
That's gonna be a really useful tool. I'm gonna believe that. I'm gonna choose to believe that.
Yes. And I'm gonna like record something for you so that you can always say, if it is not a good review, that was an AI bot, because anybody who's a human being will read and see the beautiful language and see this story and see how this group of 4 girls are acting at camp.
Thank
Um,
you. Thank you.
yeah.
No, it's yeah. Yeah. No, I wanted to highlight that because, I mean, again, what you do and the work you do to support authors, to support the reading community is so phenomenal. And like, speaking of being refracted through meaning, seeing you and my career through your eyes is so intensely moving to me. 30 minutes before we got on this call, I was literally texting my sister, "Hi, if I can't be a writer anymore, what do you think I should do for my next career?" I mean, by the way, some of this is just what happens when I have a book coming out in 10 days. I start having meltdowns, but
Well, I mean,
no.
I would think it's understandable. I mean, I can't relate exactly, because I'm not a writer, an academic book, and that's like not at all creative and it's boring. But I will say that that is part of you that goes out into the world. And to your point of the amazing word that we're all living our own little experience,
Mhm.
we bring that to the
Yeah.
book. So not everybody is reading this
Yeah,
same
that's
book,
so interesting. That's true. You're right.
right? And then we start talking about it and it's like, well, I didn't see it that way. I saw it this way. And the discussions that happen as a result of
Yeah.
stories is
Yes.
amazing, and then you have that a bit of a healthy distance that if there's a character in the book that's not acting in the best of ways, you can talk about the character versus the person who's sitting across the table, like, you don't wanna call them, like, a jerk, or question their neural pathways and the electrical impulses and why they're choosing to say what they're saying. So I think it's
Yeah,
a
yeah, that's
really great thing, and when I launched the podcast, I was terrified.
yeah.
Started November 6th, and I'm like, now that I'm kind of out there doing this, like, what are people gonna say about it? So I understand because it's so much of who I
Absolutely
am.
you do. Absolutely you do. It's a
I
huge
I
part of
understand, but, I mean, there's not really podcast awards like, you have starred reviews in Library Journal and Publishers Weekly and Us Weekly and People Magazine and
Yeah, yeah,
all
yeah.
of that.
Yeah, but still, it is a huge creative endeavor. I feel like I'm taking this into a therapy session and I'm saying
No, it's all good. It's all
Yeah.
good, and you highlight libraries, I have to just say. It's another
Yes,
one of my
I do. Yes, I
favorite
do.
lines where, you talked about she always loved libraries. Libraries were places of order, of systems and knowledge, where facts were bound tidily inside of hardcovers and history was indexed and preserved for consultation.
Yeah.
I just so well said. I mean, not just preserved for research, but you say consultation because, yes, I have to imagine during the course of writing this book, there were tidily gathered pieces underneath hardcovers that you consulted
Yeah,
to
absolutely. Yeah, no,
inform.
it's funny. I mean, although I could probably make a peon to libraries in the eyes of any particular character, I've told this story before, but I've had two basically great loves in my life. One of them is writing and reading. I'm counting them as one because for me they're very linked. They've always been very linked. And then the other one is food, eating and cooking. I had this great mix of the 2 when I was really young, and it's one of my earliest memories. I think it was must have been even pre-K. I was definitely only in a half-day program, and my mom would get me, and I just remember we would go pick out a library book, and I would also get, like, really gross macaroni salad from a grocery store, which I loved, and also we didn't really eat outside of the home very often, so for me, it was still a
Was a
treat.
treat.
And we
Yeah.
would sit on the wall outside the library, and she would read to me, and I would get to eat my lunch, and it really is one of my earliest memories, and it was regular. I don't know that we did it every week, but it lives in my body as a regular occurrence, and all of these things, my mother, the food, the specialness, the library, the selection, they're all linked, right?
Yeah.
So I do think that, that is Kate Willis's view of why she loves libraries. I could probably have a totally different character who has totally different values, and I would be able to give another argument for why
That's the great
they love
thing.
arguments.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
They're
exactly.
for everybody, and it's amazing. I mean, just before I left today, there was a customer who came in who is now faculty at University of Texas, and he was talking about coming here as a kid to the library. It was back in the 60s. He's like, and my dad worked downtown, and so he would bring me. We had a great library that was a community neighborhood. He's like, but my dad wanted us to see because I work at the main library. So, 4 floors and the memories he talks about going and picking out books and being able to see. And his dad was some scientist and being able to see the things that his dad consulted on the shelf. It just people have a nostalgia for libraries.
I mean, I think libraries in general, I mean, again, I'm very biased, but they kind of represent one of the best things humanity's ever done. I mean, they're very anti-capitalist,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
I mean, that's basically it. They're very anti-capitalist, which again, increasingly in our society is just it's so hard to find those corners. And yeah, the idea of just, I remember when I first learned about ancient Alexandria, which had one of the biggest libraries of the world, and learning about that as this, they had chosen to make their society not based on wealth and power, but their idea was if they had the most knowledge, that would be how they would run their society. And they had this very, very magical, I mean, at least, I'm sure if I lived back then, maybe I wouldn't find it so magical. But to me, reading about that, the Library of Alexandria, was so transporting. And there are so few spaces that exist that are like libraries. Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up in Pittsburgh, so big fan of Andrew Carnegie and making public libraries accessible because
Yes.
as a kid, it was a membership only that you had to pay in order to get in. And he thought, one day,
I
yeah,
didn't even know that history.
yeah, members only. And he said, one day if I, do well, thankfully he did, that he would make libraries accessible to everybody. And if you look at the Carnegie libraries that were built and still exist today, you'll see a lantern outside and it's to guide people the light
I'm
to knowledge.
going to cry again.
Yeah. I mean, so to your point, yeah, there are very few places where one can just go in. You don't have to pay, you don't have to buy anything, you don't have to like eat anything, drink anything. You can just be.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we
And
don't keep
also keep
track of
learning.
yeah,
Yeah. At the
yeah.
same time, I mean, this is what I always also liked about being a writer is that, again, if you couple that with the fact that you could go to a library, read all of these books, read as many books as you want,
Mhm.
learn, you know, try to experiment with writing in that style, read craft books if you want, but like you don't need anything to be a writer. You don't need fancy equipment. You don't need expensive degrees. You can, I mean, you need to learn the craft,
Right.
but you can learn the craft with the tools accessible and available for free. It's pretty amazing.
It is pretty amazing. Very few places can you really do that, learn
Yeah.
something for nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
So do you remember at what point you decided you wanted to be a writer?
No, I don't. I don't think I ever saw writing as, much like Kate with her tangly threads, seeing tangly threads. It was so entangled writing in my daily life by even the time I was in high school.
Okay.
So, but even in middle school, I was entering writing competitions and stuff like that. Short stories, I did win the
Of
first
course.
prize in the county in 8th grade. It was
Yeah.
very exciting. Um,
Did you
no,
save that story?
ugh,
Some
no,
no.
no, I don't even remember it. Isn't it sad?
No.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
But
it's okay.
then in my freshman year of high school, I was in a big Jane Austen phase, and I wanted to write my first novel. It was going to be a a modernization of Northanger Abbey or something like that. Again, this was only a couple years after Clueless came out, so I'm
Of
sure I
course.
was inspired by that as well. So
Who wouldn't be?
I just always had, and then like in college, I wrote a rhyming picture book, like, and it was, but it was actually an allegory about depression, which I struggled with. I mean, I just always had writing going on. There was one huge, blessing I had compared to other people who find their way to this industry, which is my dad is a writer. He's a published author. He's a true crime writer. So he does
How did
historical
I
true.
not know that? I think my librarian, membership is gonna be revoked.
He's
Yeah.
published like 40 books and also some academic stuff too, because, about myth and violence and whatever. But so I also knew, so I had on the one hand writing going on constantly. And then I also knew that writing was a thing that some people got paid for, which I know that
Oh,
sounds silly,
yes.
but a lot of times people don't know that unless they're or at least they didn't. Now with the internet, of course they do. They see it on Instagram if they're even interested. But back in the day, you could
Right.
literally be a very creative person who loved to write and have no idea that that was connected to an actual professional career, you know?
Right. Or if you did, you normally would have parents who would be like, "Okay, well, what else
Yeah,
can we do? That's a hobby."
yeah,
Not
exactly.
to
You
demean
had
or
no idea
diminish it.
how to bridge the gap. It was like you knew some people did, but you had no idea what the steps were.
Right.
Now you have whole Instagram accounts dedicated to like just querying, right?
Right.
Querying an agent. So yeah, there was never a single moment. I mean, I went back to graduate school to get my creative writing degree largely as a way of, kind of like biding time because I didn't know what else to do. There wasn't really any, I was very good at school. Like I was a big nerd, but it wasn't specialized. It's not like I wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer or, like I just liked learning things and then I liked to write. So, I went to graduate school and then, really I had 2 books that I tried to submit in my early 20s. Neither of them worked out. And then I started working in publishing very briefly, but it really gave me a better understanding of the commercial mechanics of storytelling. And after that, during that time, I wrote Before I Fall.
Yeah, it's it hits a certain spot for me because I switched careers to, go back to school because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't have that vocational calling to be a
Yes.
doctor or an astronaut or an
Yeah.
accountant. I don't know who
Yeah.
dreams of being one of those, but yeah, some people do because they like order and precision and only one
Exactly.
answer. And so I went back, to graduate school and, it was the best thing I ever did. Uh,
That's awesome. That's
yeah,
awesome. And how old were you when you did that?
I had just turned 40 when like,
That
just
is
after I graduated.
that's
Yeah, I
awesome.
spent like 18 years in sales and marketing.
Yeah.
I sold air freight. Ooh, exciting. I sold drugs, like pharmaceutical drugs.
I was gonna
To
say,
clarify, because
yeah,
everybody's like, "You're a drug rep." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm a drug rep." But you say that outside the industry and people are like, "What?"
yes.
And
Yeah,
then I
yeah.
sold here. I worked for a classical radio station in town and sold commercials, wrote commercials, produced broadcasts, like had a very and
Yeah.
then and then during that time I was working in radio, I met Nancy Pearl, who completely changed my life. And, we did something for the radio together and we got done. And she's like, "Jen, you should go to library school." And I was like, huh, that makes sense.
It's so cool. I love that. I love kind of mid-career jumps, leaps, pivots, whatever, because
Hmm.
again, weird to be I'm 43 now, and I talk about this with a lot of people. The weird thing about being this age is that on the one hand, you've done a particular thing already for
Hmm.
what feels like an eternity. It's a
Yes.
long time, and on the other hand, you have a lot of time left, and so it's really important to, like, reevaluate and see what else you can learn, what else you can do, in my opinion.
Is that why you chose to do an adult book? Was that kind of that stretch
Yeah.
like, well, I've done YA and fantastic at it. I mean, without a doubt, that goes without saying, but was this like, well, can I do an adult book?
Yes. I mean, I think it wasn't so conscious as that. I think, I took about a 4-year break, not from writing, but from really finishing anything. Mm, I really was kind of lost in a wilderness and my life changed enormously during that time. So this is a time that spans between basically 38, let's say, and 42. In that time, I got sober. I'd had real struggles with alcohol and real drugs. So I got sober.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I got divorced, which was painful and very sad. It was a very loving but very sad divorce. Wasn't working, so I had to sell a house and move. You know, I also
All the
got breast
major life things all at
and I
once.
got breast cancer, right? So which I'm luckily was we caught early and I'm healthy now, but it was an
Thank goodness.
unbelievable period of time of disruption. I mean, I really felt, and I didn't have any writing. Again, I was writing, but I didn't know what I was writing and what I wanted to write. And I'd never had that experience before. When I was writing YA, it was boom, 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 boom. And then I did some middle, boom, 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 boom. This was like, I felt like that I was like some weird, empty, hermit crab shell just waiting for something new to emerge. And I actually did track, and at some point I'll look back at it. I decided for a while to just write about the experience of being so lost, right? Like having to get up every day and not be miserable and choose to find meaning, but really truly having no idea where I was in the story, right? Like in the broad story of my life,
Right.
I had no idea where I was. And
Wow.
at some point, I'll return to it because I knew on some level I was like, this must change. So I think the other thing is just that those are really adult things, right? Like those are really adult experiences. Kate in The Girl
Right.
on the Lake is, again, she's a sober former alcoholic, which I was able to a lot of my experiences in. I was a lot her arc is, she's not struggling really with the urge to drink again, which I never did, fortunately, after I got sober. I was very lucky. She's struggling with, the crisis of what it means to be also then without her coping mechanism in the absence of some larger belief, right? In
Right.
the absence of some larger meaning making engine. So I thought that was a very interesting point on the sobriety journey to highlight. And they were just, again, it was just like, and I think in a way, I've never thought about it until I was on this podcast, but maybe in a way, the now then structure of the book kind of parallels for me this difference of what I'm writing now and what I was writing then.
Right. I also think I couldn't help but observe Kate and the lines Kate hated dead time. Hours that felt like a bludgeon with no work to do, no phone calls to make, nothing to focus or fixate on.
Yes.
And a little bit to your point of feeling lost, it's that when we don't have something, sometimes we're so busy
Yes.
and engaged and fixated or focused, whatever word we want to use, that we're not taking the time to kind of figure things out or be a little bit
Yes.
more introspective or reflective. And you,
And sit in uncertainty.
yeah,
Sit in
and
un
that's really hard. And I would imagine it's even harder for a writer who always knows the stories that always have like a cadence and an arc and a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yeah.
And to
Yeah.
to now be sitting with your life, which is an incredible narrative and journey
Yeah.
that should
Thank
be
you.
celebrated, to not know what's next
Yeah,
has to be
absolutely. Or
incredibly
whether anything
uncomfortable.
is next, oh my gosh, it was so scary. And actually, thank you for calling out that line. I mean, that line is basically probably a confessional about who I was before I got sober and even in the early days of sobriety when, I did so much running. As you said before, books can, you can escape into stories in books. And I did for so many years, but there is a way you have to be able to come out. You have to be able to step back into
Mhm.
reality and to accept reality as it is. And I did not know how to do that. And there were so many ways that I used to just run and escape. I don't know from what, 4.5 years sober. Honestly, like I love being sober. I love being in reality and I love traveling on these mental journeys and into character, into books. I had to learn how to do that, when I was 39 and 40. And to your point, yeah, I mean, that was the scariest time of my life. I mean, to also have really, to feel that I'd lost my voice, which again, I never really had. It's just I didn't know what I was so without story myself. How could I possibly have known what I wanted to write? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, don't isn't like kind of one of the adages with writers is, write what you know or write what you're curious about.
Yes.
And so I think in this story, The Girl in the Lake, I think you kind of fuse those two things together and
Great.
it dovetails beautifully,
Thank
you
you.
know, telling Kate's story. And, it's hard enough to go and investigate, right? I use the word investigate to meet with Henley, the 6-year-old who claims of a past life and trying to figure out if it's authentic and meets that framework. And at the same time, she's going back to a place that holds a lot of memories for her. So you're
Yeah.
kind of like stirring stuff,
Yeah.
and then sprinkling in her work, and the two are kind of
Yes.
colliding,
Yes.
and it
Yeah.
and it forces her to really take a step back and think.
And it forces her to come into without giving anything away.
Yeah, no
I mean,
spoilers,
yeah,
yeah.
forces her to come into contact with, many, many things she's been escaping or avoiding. I mean, I think your assessment that this is a real combination of writing what I know and what I'm so curious about, and then mixing it with the actual atmosphere that I was living in the time, because this is actually I was living in upstate New York, right across from Massachusetts, where this book, I mean, like 20 minutes away from where this book is set. So, it all kind of came together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great story, and, like any group camping, can we talk a little bit about the Gray Lady? Just the
Yeah.
the urban legend, the thing that, I was up till 3:30 last night or this morning reading, finishing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, "Okay, I'm sleeping with all the lights on." I double checked doors. I'm like, we like make sure blinds are closed so I don't see anything that could
Oh my
be.
gosh. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
It's
love
like,
that.
this is yeah, can't wait to tell Lord, thanks for that."
Yeah, there is. There's also this thread of urban legend,
Mhm.
which, first of all, that was just like part of camp. There was always something like that. Every
Around
camp
the
has something like
campfire.
that. Yeah, exactly. And that region in Massachusetts, they have a lot of different, Bigfoot sightings, basically. I mean, I think any kind of rural area does. And I'm also fascinated by again the way that our real, fears and projected guilt or terrors get transformed into these kinds of legends that we tell
Mhm.
to each other. So
Yeah,
that's actually an element in book 2 as well. There's a
awesome.
heavy
Well,
urban
I couldn't
legend
help
one.
but notice book 1 ends with
Yes.
somebody calling from Allegheny County, which is where I grew up because that's the
No
Pittsburgh
way.
area. Yeah. Yeah, way. So I was like, "Whew, cool."
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, the book 2, I've conceived, we'll see how long I'm able to continue the series. I honestly would love to continue it forever. Book 2, I actually introduce a new main character who's connected to Kate. Because so I conceive of this series more as an anthology or a universe, although I do imagine that I would bring Kate back for different books, but I wanted to have a character who would have her own kind of personal arc, right, related to this case. So yeah, it's called The Sleepwalker, and it's out next year, same time.
I cannot wait, right? Super excited.
Your face was so funny when you saw the title. You were like,
I know, right? Because I'm like, "Oh, super geeks," and then I was like, "Oh my gosh, a whole year," but,
yeah,
it'll fly. So and I just think the topic itself is fascinating. I don't think I've ever and I've read a lot, I don't think I've ever read a book that features DOPS, right? This thing from the University of Virginia that is a very real thing. Because that was the first thing I did. I was like, "Does this even really exist?" Right? A librarian, like, gotta make sure, and sure enough, and there are things that are unexplainable, and
isn't
I
it
think
wild?
it'll
I'm
resonate.
obsessed with Dops. I can't believe there's not like 87 TV shows made about them. By the way, this is what my second career will be. I've decided if I have a second career, I want to go work for Dops.
Okay. I think that would be terrific. I mean, and I think we've all felt some of that stuff from time to time. I mean, there are times where, people pass away and all of a sudden something makes a
Yeah.
noise. My niece's toy all of a sudden made a noise. I was like, "What? What?" Nobody is
Yeah.
even remotely near it,
Yeah.
or all of a sudden like the wafting of the perfume that my grandmother wore, and I was like, "Where did
100.
that?" Yeah. So I mean, there are things that cannot be explained that makes me curious. I think other people curious.
Yeah.
And to know that there's a center dedicated to sussing out the charlatans from
Yes.
those who
Yeah.
this is truly happening.
Yeah. And that also, I mean, in many cases, they do suss out charlatans here and there, but also that in many cases, they've aggregated this enormous volume of, verifiable or as verifiable as some of these things can be. Because if somebody dies and then comes back and reports, what happened to them, there's no way to verify it. But if 20,000 people die and come back and their experience matches, even though they're from all different countries, they from
Right.
all different religions, they don't know each other, right? That starts to look like, okay, yeah, we can't verify the individual accounts, but there is something there that should constitute some degree of rigorous seriousness.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, to the point of that part of the framework that it is consistent. If people are saying very similar things and across the world, and not everybody can communicate, yes, with social media today and the internet and all of that other fun stuff. But at the same time, not everybody's doing that, reading that, consuming that,
Yeah,
consulting that.
absolutely. Yeah.
And then it makes
Yeah.
me like really frustrated with the people that do it as a game, as a way to like
Yeah.
gain money or fame or notoriety. And I'm like, really?
Yes. Yes, I
So,
know, absolutely. I mean, that's true of so many things, the way that people leverage. Yeah, I mean, this is one of there are other internet, I think there's like kind of in various countries, I found like a French equivalent to DOPS. I mean, it really is fascinating and it's amazing to know that there are academic and scientific researchers
Yes.
who are assembling this research. What it makes me frustrated with is just that we don't kind of talk about it more. I mean, especially the past life recollections are extraordinary from what I can tell from some of the assembled cases. But I recently read a book called Lucid Dying, and it's about recalled experiences of death, which have just skyrocketed ever since our technology to bring people back from death, right, to resuscitate them,
Right.
improved. And it's just really compelling evidence. I don't know what to say. It really is. It's a lot of evidence and it's very compelling. And then on YouTube, there are people, like you said, who are clearly just, reporting something for views or to advance their own, faith agenda or whatever it is.
Right. And that's where our critical thinking comes into
Yeah.
play, right?
Yeah.
For us to
Yeah.
be able to discern what is true and not true. There's
Exactly.
even a point in here, we ghost past lives, gray lady who allegedly kind of
Yeah.
has a presence
On
on that
site.
campground.
Yeah.
But you ask the question, what does it mean to be haunted? And it means that certain stories, certain facts, certain questions won't leave us alone and they consume us no matter how hard we try to forget.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just think
And in that way, we're all haunted by something.
correct,
Yeah.
right? So, like, why can't we be haunted from a past life, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Open minded, accessible,
Yeah. Yeah.
curious, you
Absolutely.
know?
Look, you're pushing on an open door here. I'm in agreement.
Absolutely. I cannot wait to see where the series goes.
Thank you, Jen.
No, it's going to make people talk. I don't know how you can't not talk. And then my guess is this is the impetus for those conversations where now people start sharing the things that they've experienced or the stories that
I
they've heard.
hope so. I am here for it.
Yes, I think. And so the fact that, people have, access, to Instagram or to, use to be able to share those stories, I think that's going to be fantastic.
Yes, please. If you're listening to this and you want to share stories, I
How
am
do they
here.
get in touch with you?
So you can, the best way is on Instagram. I'm Lauren_Oliver_books. I know that's annoying. And that's the best place to share stories for me. You can also find me on Substack and on Amazon. Yeah.
It's terrific.
Yeah.
I would talk to you the whole rest of the day because this is just such an interesting talk. And then it's hard to not do spoilers. So I will
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this is Stories End, the final 5 questions,
Okay.
right? So of the 4 friends, Becca, Mari, Lenny, and Kate, who would you be most likely to camp with?
I mean, Lenny's pretty fierce. I would probably choose Lenny.
I liked Lenny a lot too.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, she was always able to kind of get them out of trouble.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Totally.
you manage so many projects, right? Your AI, you're writing screenplays, you're producing episodes, you're writing books, Substack, everything else. What is a time hack that you can share?
Mm,
You have the ability to freeze time.
yeah. Um, I mean, I really think my only real skill in life is time management. So actually, I'll give a
Only
hack.
skill?
No,
I'm gonna
but
call you on
my
that.
greatest I never be afraid to make a tiny bit of progress. That's the biggest thing I have. Like sometimes I only can work on 20 minutes on a number of different things a day, but that 20 minutes of effort over time piles up. So I guess that's the thing. Never be afraid to make what feels like an insubstantial amount of progress. Just do it regularly every day.
Consistency. Yeah. That's awesome. That's such good advice. What is your current wallpaper on your phone?
My nephew. My nephew's always my wallpaper.
How old?
He's 6.
Oh,
He's 6. Yeah.
Henley's
Weird.
age. Wow. Now I'm interested. What's one question you wish you knew the answer to?
Gosh, I'm taking this question so seriously. I mean, I guess I would like to know for sure that if there was life after death or consciousness went on after death. I guess I would like to know that for sure. But then it would take out the faith journey, you know?
Yeah, and that mystery. It's kind of like if you kind of always knew what you were getting, would you be
Yeah, exactly.
bored? I mean, if
Yeah.
you would have told me how many years ago, guess what, you're going to be a librarian and have a podcast, I would have laughed. My mom
Yeah.
still laughs. She's like, "You're the quiet one." You're the one that's really like reflective and introspective. And I'm like, she says to me, who is that hosting the podcast?
Oh my gosh, that's
It's hilarious.
Yeah, it is hilarious.
Okay, the final question. What song is always on your road trip playlist?
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, this is dating back from college, but Last Goodbye by Jeff Buckley. We used to play that on repeat driving between Chicago and New York, so I always put it on.
Great choice.
Yeah.
Thank you to all of you who are listening, and a gigantic thank you to Lauren Oliver, whose debut adult novel, The Girl in the Lake, just published this week. So congrats again. If you're looking for a book that is the start of what is going to be a smash series with a strong yet human female lead, this is the book for you. If you're looking for a propulsive read that will have you off kilter and flinching as you read late into the night, this is the book for you. If you're looking for a book that gives you pause to things that cannot always be explained, this is the book for you. To find out who else is going to be a guest, go to storytocount.com. This is Story to Count with Jen Jumba.